Billionaire catches homeless boy dancing with his paralyzed daughter. A barefoot, hungry boy slipped through the gates of a mansion and saw the billionaire's daughter sitting in silence, her face clouded with sadness. Then he did something no one expected. He began to dance, not for money, not for food, but simply to make her smile. What happened next would change all of their lives forever. Thomas Sterling was one of the wealthiest men in the city. His empire spanned tech, real estate, and shipping, earning him the nickname the Golden Touch because everything he invested in turned to success. Yet behind the high walls of his Crestwood Heights mansion, his greatest struggle was not business. It was the silence of a daughter whose laughter he longed to hear again. His only daughter, Chloe, once a bright, lively 8-year-old, had been left paralyzed after the tragic car accident that also claimed the life of his beloved wife, Eleanor. Once her laughter rang through the house like music. Once she ran through the gardens chasing butterflies. But now she sat quietly in her wheelchair, staring out the window, her spirit dimmed. At first, Thomas tried to fight it with his wealth. He flew her to India for surgery, to Germany for therapy, to the US for advanced treatment. Every attempt ended in the same crushing disappointment. Chloe's smile faded. Her laughter disappeared. She rarely left her room, except when her nanny rolled her into the garden. Thomas, though proud and cold before the world, felt his heart break each day as he saw her staring blankly into the distance. But one hot afternoon, something unexpected happened. Chloe sat quietly in the garden, her eyes fixed on the gate beyond, lost in thought. She noticed movement in the corner of her eye. A boy, barefoot and ragged, slipped quietly through a small space by the hedge. His shirt was torn, his shorts too big for his thin frame. His hair was messy, his knees bruised from life on the streets. But when he looked at Chloe, his eyes sparkled with mischief. Then, without a word, he began to dance. Not a professional dance, not the kind you saw in videos or on TV. His steps were exaggerated and funny. His arms swung like a clown's, his body twisting and spinning in ways that made him look ridiculous. At first, Chloe just blinked. Then a small giggle escaped her lips. The boy made his eyes wide and pretended to slip, catching himself dramatically. Chloe clapped her hands. And then, like a miracle, she laughed. It wasn't a polite laugh or a forced giggle. It was pure, unrestrained laughter that echoed across the compound. The boy grinned and danced harder, spinning, hopping, rolling on the grass like a performer on stage. Chloe's laughter grew louder. His name was Leo. At least that's the name he gave when people asked. Nobody knew his full story because he rarely spoke about it. What people in the neighborhood did know was that Leo had no home. Some nights he slept under the bridge near the train station. Other nights he found corners of unfinished buildings where he could hide. He had no parents anyone had seen, no siblings, and no bed except the hard concrete floor. Leo had one thing that kept him alive: his joy. When hunger was strong and sleep would not come, he danced. When drivers shouted at him for begging at the traffic lights, he danced. He danced for strangers on the street, and sometimes they gave him a few coins. Dancing made him feel alive. It gave him joy even in his suffering. His movements with his voice, his shield, his way of escaping the pain of being unwanted. That afternoon, Leo was wandering past the millionaire's mansion. He peered through a small hole in the gate and saw Chloe sitting quietly nearby. Her small face rested on the arm of her wheelchair, her eyes fixed sadly on the ground. Something moved inside Leo. He thought, I know what sadness feels like. But if I dance for her, maybe I can make her smile. Maybe, just maybe, I can chase her sadness away. So Leo slipped quietly through the hedge and stepped into the garden. He began to dance, pulling silly faces and twisting his body in ridiculous, exaggerated moves. When Chloe laughed, it felt to him like a victory greater than finding food after a long day of hunger. Her laughter made his heart race. He danced harder, wilder, each clap and giggle from her giving him new energy. In those precious minutes, Leo forgot that he was barefoot, hungry, and without a home. He wasn't a beggar or a boy from the street. He was simply a child, bringing joy to another child. What Leo did not realize was that he wasn't only making Chloe laugh, he was changing her life and his own forever. Inside the mansion, Thomas heard it. He froze. He hadn't heard that sound in months. He rushed to the balcony, expecting to see a miracle, and in a way, he did. His daughter was laughing, clapping, her eyes alive again, and the source of her joy was not medicine, not therapy, not money. It was a homeless boy dancing barefoot in his compound. Thomas Sterling's first reaction was anger. How had this ragged street boy entered his compound? Where were the guards? What if he was dangerous? Thomas's fists clenched. He almost called out, ready to send the boy away immediately. But then he saw Chloe. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement. Her arms were moving, clapping with strength he hadn't seen in months. Her back, usually slouched, was upright, and her laughter, loud, uncontrolled, full of life, filled the air. Thomas froze in his tracks. For months, he had spent millions chasing doctors and treatments, only to watch his daughter sink deeper into despair. Now, in less than 10 minutes, this barefoot boy had brought her back to life. Thomas didn't understand it, he didn't trust it, but he couldn't deny what he was seeing. He hid behind one of the marble pillars of the mansion, watching silently. His chest tightened, not with anger this time, but with something he almost forgotten: hope. As the boy danced and Chloe clapped, Thomas realized something shocking. This street boy was doing for his daughter what all his wealth could not. Leo came back the next afternoon, the same way he came the first time: quiet, quick, and hopeful. He didn't sneak because he wanted to steal. He came because he now carried a small mission in his heart: make Chloe laugh again. He had slept behind a kiosk the night before, stomach rumbling, but he woke up with a smile. He had found something bigger than hunger: purpose. As he slipped through the hedge, he saw her waiting by the gate, eyes bright, hands already ready to clap. "Are you ready?" he asked, lifting his arms like a circus clown. Chloe giggled and nodded. Before he could start, Thomas Sterling stepped out. For a second, Leo froze. He knew that look: adult anger that comes before a beating or a boot on the road. He held his breath, prepared to run if he had to. Chloe's voice broke the tension. "Daddy, please don't send him away, please." Thomas studied the boy up close for the first time. The shirt was torn at the shoulder, the shorts hung on a waist too thin. The boy was barefoot with scars on his knees that told stories no child should have to tell, but his eyes were steady, not arrogant, not weak, but just steady. "What's your name?" Thomas asked. "Leo," the boy replied. "Why did you come in here?" Leo swallowed. "I saw her. She looked sad the first day. I thought maybe if I danced, she would laugh. I didn't come to take anything, sir. I only came to give something small. I can leave after." The words were simple, but they sank into Thomas like rain on dry earth. "Where do you stay?" Thomas asked softer now. "Anywhere," Leo said. "Train station. Sometimes I dance for small money. Sometimes I just dance for myself so hunger won't win." Chloe's eyes filled. "He makes me happy, Daddy." Thomas glanced at his daughter. Her cheeks were glowing, her back straight. He noticed her toes shift. It might have been small, but it was a movement he hadn't seen in months. He took a breath. "Okay, you can stay for today, in the open where I can see you. No misbehavior. Do you understand?" Leo nodded quickly, relief washing over his face. He turned to Chloe with a grin. "Showtime?" he asked. She clapped.
And just like that, the garden became a stage again. One day turned into 3. 3 turned into a week. The guards were told not to stop the boy anymore. "Let him in at 4, Thomas instructed. "He leaves at 6. He eats before he goes." Leo arrived each day with new ideas. He danced like a spinning top. He told funny stories from the train station. He acted out quarrels between bus drivers and their passengers. He made sound effects, fell dramatically, stood up grandly, bowed like a king, and then crossed his eyes until Chloe's laughter shook her shoulders. But it wasn't just laughter. Something else was happening. Chloe's hands grew stronger from clapping. She started lifting her arms to copy Leo's moves. Her voice grew more confident. She told him, "Again. No. Do it like yesterday." She even tried to spin her wheelchair in small circles when he spun on the grass, and every small turn felt like victory. Thomas watched all of this quietly. He noticed the little things, how Leo never asked for anything before performing, how he always checked Chloe's face before trying a joke, how he expected nothing but claps, yet when food was offered, he ate gently like someone who knew what it meant to eat once a day. In the evenings, after Leo left, Chloe spoke more than before. "Daddy, did you see the one where he pretended to be a police siren? Daddy, today I felt something in my toes. Daddy, can he come tomorrow?" The doctor examined her during a routine hospital visit and was surprised. "Her engagement is back," he said, looking at her closely. "This kind of motivation can spark recovery pathways we can't always explain. Whatever you're doing, keep it going. Keep it." That night, Thomas stood alone in the garden, looking at the space where Leo danced. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, gratitude that didn't come from a bank transfer. He whispered into the warm air, "Thank you, boy." And though no one was there to hear it, the garden seemed to agree. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day when you don't expect miracles. The sun leaned low, the hedge threw soft shadows on the lawn, and a radio somewhere was playing an old soul tune. Leo was mid-performance, doing his slow-motion dance where he moved as if time had become thick and heavy. Chloe laughed so hard she forgot to hold her blanket in place. "Wait," she said, catching her breath. "Let me try something." She placed both hands on the armrests of her wheelchair. Her face tightened with effort. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then her shoulders rose, then her chest, then slowly her hips lifted an inch, then 2. She held trembling for 3 long counts. 1, Leo whispered, eyes wide. 2, Thomas counted, stepping forward without realizing it. 3, Chloe breathed, before sinking back into the chair, panting and smiling, eyes wet. Silence fell over the garden. It was not the old silence, the heavy one. It was a holy silence, the kind that comes after a prayer is answered in a way you did not expect. Leo broke it with a shout. "You did it! You did it!" He spun 3 times and dropped to his knees beside her. "Champion!" Thomas knelt on the other side, his hands shaking. He touched his daughter's forehead lightly. "You are brave," he said. "I am so proud of you." Chloe reached for both of them, one small hand for her father, one for her friend. "I'm not scared anymore. When he dances, I feel like I can move." They didn't tell the world, not yet. They didn't post it or call the newspapers. They simply kept going. More laughter, more practice, more tiny movements that added up to something big. That night, Thomas couldn't sleep. He walked the long hallways of his mansion, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors. He thought of his daughter, her bright eyes when Leo entered, her stronger voice when she called out for him. Then he thought of his pride, his image, his name. It was a battle inside his chest, between pride and love, between what the world expected and what his heart was telling him. By dawn, Thomas realized something. Reputation couldn't heal his daughter. Money hadn't saved her laughter. But Leo, a boy with nothing, had given Chloe hope. For the first time, Thomas admitted to himself, maybe wealth isn't the highest power. Maybe kindness is. One Saturday afternoon, Thomas called Leo to sit with him in the garden. For the first time, the boy wasn't asked to dance. He was asked to talk. "Tell me about yourself," Thomas said. Leo hesitated. Nobody ever asked about him. People only saw his dirty clothes and waved him off. But Thomas's eyes were serious, almost gentle. "I don't know where I was born," he began softly. "My mother died when I was little. My father left. Some women at the market gave me food sometimes, but when I got older, they stopped, so I stayed with other boys at the train station. We sleep under the bridge or in shops if they're empty."
Thomas listened, his chest tightening. "Why do you dance?" he asked. Leo smiled faintly. "When you're hungry, your body feels heavy. If you just sit, the hunger wins. But if you move, if you dance, it feels lighter. People laugh. Sometimes they give me coins, sometimes they don't. But at least I don't feel invisible." Thomas nodded slowly. He had attended the best schools, eaten the finest meals, and traveled the world. Yet sitting in front of him was a boy who had learned life's deepest truths without any teacher. "Joy is strength," Thomas said firmly. "From today, you are not invisible anymore. You are part of this house." Leo blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. But when Chloe wheeled herself closer and grabbed his hand, smiling wide, he realized he was no longer just a boy of the streets. He was becoming family. The true turning point came one afternoon that began like any other. The sun was warm, the flowers in the garden swayed gently, and Leo was doing his playful robot dance while Chloe clapped. "I want to try standing," she shouted suddenly, surprising even herself. Leo stopped mid-move. "What?" "I mean it," she insisted, her voice strong. Thomas, sitting nearby, tensed. He didn't want her to strain, but he also knew he couldn't hold her back. Chloe placed her hands on her wheelchair handles. Her arms shook, but she didn't stop. She pushed hard, her face scrunching in effort. Slowly, painfully, she rose. One knee trembled, then the other straightened slightly. She wasn't standing tall, but she was up. Her feet pressing against the ground, her body upright for the first time since the accident. Thomas's heart slammed in his chest. The guards at the gate froze. Even the housemaids gasped from the distance. Leo shouted with joy, spinning in circles before dropping to his knees. "You did it! You're standing, Chloe! You're standing!" Chloe held herself there for 3 seconds, her little body trembling like a leaf in the wind. Then she fell back gently into the chair. Instead of crying, she laughed. "I stood! Did you see me, Daddy? I stood!" Thomas knelt beside her, tears blurring his vision. He touched her trembling hands. "I saw, sweetheart, and I have never been prouder." That day, the mansion was no longer silent. It roared with laughter, claps, and cheers. The turning point had come, and Thomas knew it. His daughter's healing had begun, and it all started with a boy who once had nothing but a dance. That night, long after Chloe had fallen asleep, Thomas sat in the quiet of his study. The papers on his desk were untouched. His phone buzzed with messages, but he ignored them. His mind was on one thing: Leo. For weeks, the boy had brought life back to his daughter. She laughed again, she moved again, she lived again. And tonight, she had stood. Even if only for a few seconds, it was a miracle. Thomas knew it was not luck. It was Leo. That night, Thomas found Leo sitting quietly on the back steps, his arms wrapped around his knees, staring into the darkness as though unsure if he'd truly belonged there. Thomas lowered himself beside him. "You shouldn't be out here alone," Thomas said gently. Leo gave a small shrug. "I'm used to it, sir." "Not anymore," Thomas replied, his voice steady, carrying the weight of a promise. "This is your home now. You're part of this family. You'll eat 3 meals a day, you'll go to school, and you'll never again have to wonder where to lay your head." Leo's eyes widened, his voice trembling as he whispered, "Thank you, sir." Thomas turned to face him fully, his own eyes glistening. "Listen to me, Leo. I know what you've given my daughter. You gave her something no money, no doctor, no medicine could provide. Hope. And anyone who gives hope is not just worth knowing, they are worth loving. For the first time in his life, Leo felt truly seen. His throat tightened and tears slipped down his cheeks. That night, he lay on a soft bed, safe under a roof in a place he could finally call home. The cold concrete nights of the past were over. It didn't take long for the story to sweep across the city. A powerful millionaire had opened his doors to a boy from the streets. To some, it was an act of reckless sentiment. To others, it was the mark of true courage. The newspapers blazed with headlines. Millionaire Sterling adopts street child. City divided between outrage and admiration. Some of Thomas's business partners pulled him aside. "Thomas, this will damage your reputation. A street boy in your mansion. What if he steals? What if he disgraces you? Think of your image." But Thomas had changed. He no longer cared for shallow appearances. "My image," he said calmly. "My daughter is standing again. My daughter is smiling again. That is the only image I care about." His daughter herself told anyone who questioned her, "Leo is my friend. He makes me strong. If you don't like him, you don't love me." The voices of doubt grew quieter, because while some mocked, many others admired. Neighbors whispered differently now. Imagine, a boy from the street is helping Chloe walk again. Maybe kindness is richer than money. And in the middle of it all, Leo remained humble. He didn't care about newspapers or gossip. Every day he just danced. Every day he laughed with Chloe. Every day he gave his gift. The mansion that once echoed with silence was now filled with life. Mornings started with Chloe calling out for Leo. Afternoons were filled with laughter as he performed his silly routines. Evenings ended with shared meals where Chloe teased her father for smiling more often than before. Slowly, Chloe's therapy improved. With Leo cheering beside her, she walked small steps, then longer ones. She still used her wheelchair at times, but fear no longer controlled her. She was living again. Thomas, too, transformed. He was no longer just a millionaire chasing business deals. He was a father rediscovering joy. And with Leo, he found himself acting like a father again, guiding, teaching, protecting. One day, Chloe looked at Leo and whispered, "Now I'm not alone anymore. I have a brother." Thomas laughed, but inside his heart swelled with pride. For the first time in years, his house was no longer just a mansion. It was a home. One evening, as the sun painted the city sky in gold and crimson, Thomas stood in the garden watching Chloe take careful steps with Leo holding her hand. The sound of her laughter, mixed with Leo's playful shouts, filled the air. In that moment, Thomas understood something he had never truly known. Money was useful, yes, but true wealth was not in bank accounts or business deals. True wealth was in the laughter of his daughter, in the courage of a boy who refused to be broken by the streets, in the love that bound them all together. He whispered to himself, "I thought I had everything, but I had nothing until I met this boy." From that day, Thomas Sterling became known not just as a wealthy man, but as a man of heart. Leo was no longer the homeless boy. He was part of the Sterling family, and Chloe's story became a beacon of hope for families everywhere. That sometimes the cure we need does not come from medicine or money, but from love, kindness, and unexpected friendship.
Morning sun glowed softly on the gates of Northwood Academy, one of the most prestigious schools in the city. Its walls were painted cream and gold, the playground filled with children in neatly pressed uniforms and polished shoes. For most students, this was ordinary, but for Leo, it was a miracle waiting to happen. The night before, he had sat in his room, staring at the new uniform folded neatly on the chair. His fingers brushed the crisp fabric, but instead of joy, he felt a knot of fear in his stomach. "What if I don't fit in? What if they laugh at me?" he whispered to himself. Thomas Sterling knocked softly before stepping inside. Seeing the worry in Leo's eyes, he sat down beside him. "Leo," Thomas said gently, "I know tomorrow feels like standing on a stage before the world. And yes, there will be whispers. Some will doubt you. But listen to me. You don't have to prove that you belong. You already do.
You are a Sterling, not because of the name, but because of the heart you carry. Leo swallowed, his chest tight with emotion. Thomas placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Remember this, the same courage you had when you danced in the street to fight hunger, that courage will carry you anywhere. And if ever you feel small, hold your head high. Even kings were once boys no one believed in. Leo's eyes glistened. You really think I can do it? Thomas's lips curved into a small, steady smile. I don't just think it, son. I know it. Tomorrow, when you walk through those gates, remember whatever they say. You are my son, and nothing can take that away. That night, Leo slept with determination burning in his heart. And now, as he stood at the gates of Northwood Academy, Chloe's hand in his, those words echoed in his mind like a shield. He stood beside her, his new sister in spirit. Her steps now steady, her laughter bright as a melody. Only months ago, her world had been bound to a wheelchair, but today she walked with freedom and joy, every stride a living testament to resilience and hope. Beside her, Leo's palms were damp with nervous anticipation. His crisp new uniform hung a little loose on his thin frame, his polished shoes pinched with unfamiliar stiffness. The backpack on his shoulders felt at once like a crown of possibility and a weight of expectation. Chloe squeezed his hand. Don't be scared, she whispered. I'll be right here. As Leo and Chloe walked through the wide corridors of Northwood Academy, soft whispers followed them like shadows. Isn't that the boy from the streets? Why would someone like him be here? He doesn't belong here. Each word stung, and Leo felt his ears burn. His shoulders grew heavy, and for a moment, he wished he could disappear. The polished tiles beneath his feet seemed harder with every step, the walls taller, the stairs sharper. But then Thomas's words came back to him, strong and steady, as if spoken right into his heart. You are my son. You belong. Leo lifted his head just a little. His steps were still slow, but they no longer wavered. Chloe's small hand in his gave him strength, and together they kept walking forward. In the classroom, the teacher introduced him. Class, this is Leo Sterling. The surname caught on their tongues. Sterling, the millionaire's name. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Chloe clapped softly and smiled at him. That smile gave him strength. For the first time, Leo sat at a real desk, opened a notebook, and held a pencil that wasn't borrowed. His heart pounded. He was no longer just a barefoot boy from the bridge. He was a student, one of them, or at least he hoped to be. But deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning of a new struggle. The days that followed were harder than Leo expected. In class, he answered questions with honesty, but some students mocked his accent. At lunch, some students laughed as they watched Leo eat so fast, almost like he thought the food would disappear. Street boy in Northwood Academy? No way, one whispered. Another said, just wait until exams. He will fail. A third added, and the others laughed. The words cut deep, but Leo kept his head down and continued eating. He didn't want them to see how much it hurt. Leo clenched his fists under the table, trying to fight back the sting of the whispers and laughter around him. Thomas's words echoed in his heart. Even kings were once boys no one believed in. Just then, Chloe walked over and sat down beside him. She placed her tray on the table and gave him a bright, steady smile. Don't listen to them, she said softly. You belong here just like everyone else. Her words were simple, but they lifted the weight from his chest. For the first time that day, Leo let out a slow breath. With Chloe beside him, the voices of doubt didn't feel so loud anymore. But still at night, when the mansion was quiet and Chloe was asleep, Leo sometimes sat by his window, tears burning his eyes. The bed beneath him was soft, the roof above safe, but his heart felt heavy. The streets had been cruel, yes, but they never made him feel invisible the way these whispers did. One night, Thomas found him awake, staring into the dark. "What's wrong, son?" he asked gently. Leo hesitated, then whispered, "They don't want me there." Thomas's eyes softened. He placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Listen to me. Greatness never comes without resistance. They laughed at me when I was young too, but today they call me the Golden Touch. Don't let their whispers define you. Let your heart, your spirit, speak louder." Leo swallowed hard, then nodded. His father's words gave him a spark of courage. He promised himself, "One day, I'll make them see me, not just a street boy, but as someone who belongs." While Leo faced ridicule, Chloe fought her own silent battles. Though she now walked, her steps were slow, unsteady. Some classmates clapped when she entered the playground, but others whispered cruelly behind her back, "Look, she's limping. She might fall again." Chloe pretended not to hear, but every word stung. At times, she wanted to hide in her chair again, to retreat into silence. But then she remembered the boy who had made her laugh when no one else could. She remembered Leo shouting in the garden, "When you move, you win." One afternoon during break, Chloe stood before her classmates. Her legs trembled as she tried to walk across the playground. Children watched silently, some smirking, some curious. Step by step, she moved, slow, shaky, but determined. Halfway through, she stumbled. Gasps filled the air. Before anyone could laugh, Leo ran to her side. "You can do it," he called, clapping his hands. "Just one more step." Chloe lifted her head, breathing hard. Slowly, she moved forward, one shaky step, then another. By the time she reached the other side of the playground, the whispers were gone. Instead, some children began to clap. Chloe turned to face them. Her cheeks were red, but her eyes were shining. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said softly. Leo grinned wide. In that moment, they weren't just siblings by circumstance. They were warriors, each fighting their own battles, but never fighting alone. The weeks passed quickly, and whispers still followed Leo through the hallways. But then one morning, a brightly colored poster appeared on the school's notice board. "End of term dance competition. Sign up now." Excited voices filled the air. Students crowded around, chattering about costumes, music, and routines. Chloe's eyes sparkled the moment she read it. She tugged at Leo's sleeve. "You have to join," she said firmly. Leo froze, his stomach knotted. Dancing in the garden for Chloe was one thing. Dancing for an entire school, teachers, students, parents, was another. The thought terrified him. "Me? In front of everyone?" "Yes, you," she said firmly. "You were born for this." He hesitated, then glanced around. Some students were already pointing and laughing. A street boy in a dance competition? He'll embarrass himself. He doesn't stand a chance. Leo clenched his fists. He remembered the nights under the bridge when he danced just to fight hunger. He remembered Chloe's laughter, the sound that brought her back to life. Slowly, with trembling hands, he picked up the pen and wrote his name on the list. The whispers grew louder, but Leo only smiled faintly. He thought, "They don't know what I carry inside me. This isn't about them. It's about proving that joy can defeat despair." That night when Chloe told Thomas, the man raised an eyebrow. "A competition?" "Yes, Daddy," Chloe beamed. "He can win." Thomas's lips curved into a small, steady smile. "Then let the world see what I've already seen in him."
From that day on, the Sterling Mansion's garden transformed into a rehearsal stage. Every afternoon after school, Leo would practice while Chloe clapped and cheered. He spun like a top, flipped like a street acrobat, and twisted his body into comical shapes that made Chloe laugh until her sides hurt. But this time, Leo wasn't just chasing laughter. He was chasing perfection. Chloe took her role seriously, acting as his coach. "Again," she commanded. "No, faster. Make your spin bigger." Sometimes Thomas watched quietly from the balcony. He never interrupted, but his chest swelled with pride. The boy who once danced for coins at traffic lights was now preparing to stand on a stage where the world could see his gift. Even the housemaids and guards became secret spectators. At first, they peeked from corners. Then they openly clapped when he nailed a new move. "Our small master will win it," one whispered with a smile. Leo, though often tired, felt unstoppable. Each practice carried the memory of nights he went to bed hungry. Each laugh from Chloe was fuel for his soul. This time, he thought, I'm not dancing for survival. I'm dancing for a dream. And though he never admitted it aloud, he also carried another secret hope, that if he won, the whispers at school would finally turn into applause. But even as Leo prepared for glory, storm clouds gathered in the mansion. One evening, Thomas hosted a dinner with some of his business partners. The men in suits ate from golden plates, sipping expensive wine, while Chloe and Leo practiced in the garden. Laughter drifted in from outside, clashing with the stiff atmosphere inside. One of the men frowned. "Thomas, forgive me, but that boy isn't wise. He's from the streets. People are talking. They say you've let a beggar live in your mansion." Another chimed in. "What if he disgraces you? What if he steals? A reputation like yours is fragile. You've built an empire, Thomas. Don't throw it away on a stray." Thomas's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. The chatter around the table faded as his jaw tightened. For a moment, the room seemed to wait on his silence. Then images flashed through his mind. Chloe's laughter echoing in the garden, her unsteady steps slowly turning into strength, the light Leo had brought into her life when all his fortune could not. With deliberate care, he placed the fork back on the plate. Leaning forward, his eyes steady, he spoke, his voice calm, yet carrying the weight of a man who knew exactly what mattered. "You think my reputation is in danger?" He glanced toward the garden where Leo was dancing under Chloe's applause. "Gentlemen, my daughter is walking again because of him. My house is filled with joy because of him. That is worth more than all your contracts combined. If the world calls that weakness, then let them talk." Silence fell over the table. The men lowered their eyes, unable to argue. Thomas leaned back in his chair, his decision made. He would never again measure his life by what the world thought. He had already found the only treasure that mattered: family, hope, and love. The day of the competition finally arrived. The Northwood Academy auditorium gleamed under bright stage lights. Rows of parents filled the seats, cameras ready, while students whispered excitedly. For most, it was just another school event. For Leo, it was the biggest test of his life. Backstage, his hands trembled. His uniform had been replaced by simple dance clothes. Chloe had helped him pick out a plain white shirt, dark trousers, and polished shoes. He peeked through the curtain. The crowd looked endless. His heart pounded. Chloe spotted him in the corner and hurried over. She took his trembling hands in hers and held them firmly. "Close your eyes," she whispered. "Think of the garden. It's just you dancing and me clapping. Nothing else matters." Leo took a deep breath. Then the announcer's voice thundered. "Next is Leo Sterling." The whispers began immediately. "That's him, the street boy. What's he doing here? This will be embarrassing." The music started for a heartbeat. Leo froze under the spotlight. The whispers threatened to drown him. Then he remembered nights under the bridge, how he danced so hunger wouldn't win. He remembered Chloe's laughter, the spark that brought her back to life. His fear melted. His body came alive. He spun like a whirlwind, flipped like a street acrobat, and added playful, clownish moves that made the crowd roar with laughter. He clapped, stomped, slid across the stage, then froze in a statue pose before bursting into a wild spin. The audience gasped, then cheered. By the time the music ended, the entire hall was on its feet. The same children who once whispered were now chanting his name, "Leo! Leo!" And in the front row, Chloe stood with tears in her eyes, clapping harder than anyone.
The judges huddled together, whispering and nodding. The hall was buzzing, every student eager for the results. When the head judge stepped forward, silence fell. And the winner of this year's Northwood Academy dance competition is... He paused dramatically. Leo Sterling! The hall erupted. Cheers, claps, and shouts echoed like thunder. Chloe ran forward, nearly tripping in her excitement, and threw her arms around Leo. "I knew you would win," she cried. Leo's chest tightened with joy. His heart felt like it would burst. For the first time, he wasn't a boy dancing for survival. He wasn't a shadow on the street corner. He was a champion, recognized for his gift. Teachers shook his hand. Students who once mocked him now patted his back. Even the principal announced proudly, "A true Sterling indeed." But the victory meant more than trophies or applause. As Leo stood on the stage holding his award, he looked toward the back of the hall. Thomas was there, standing tall, his eyes glistening. Their gazes met. And in that moment, Leo knew he wasn't just a guest in the Sterling family. He belonged. That night, the mansion was alive with celebration. Music played, food was served, and laughter echoed through the halls. Chloe paraded around with Leo's trophy as if it were her own. Thomas, sipping quietly from his glass, whispered to himself, "You were born to shine, boy, and you've just begun." The next morning, newspapers blazed with headlines. From streets to spotlight, Millionaire's adopted son wins dance trophy. Photos of Leo in mid-dance pose filled the front pages. A local TV channel replayed clips of his performance, the crowd's cheers still echoing. For the city, it was a story of hope. For Leo, it was the sweetest victory of his young life. But far away, in a crumbling tenement, a man saw the broadcast. His hands shook as he touched the screen. His eyes, sunken from years of hardship, widened. "Leo," he whispered, "my boy." That evening, as the mansion prepared for dinner, the guards at the gate were startled by a ragged figure demanding entry. His voice cracked with desperation. "Please let me see him. I'm his father. I've come for my son." The guards exchanged wary glances. The name Sterling was now spoken with respect, and this man before them seemed the opposite of that image. But his eyes held a pleading fire. Reluctantly, they led him to the mansion door. Inside, Leo was laughing with Chloe over dinner when the butler appeared, his face pale. "Sir," he said to Thomas, "there's someone at the gate. He claims to be Leo's father." Silence fell. Chloe's fork clattered against her plate. Leo froze, his heart pounding. Memories he thought he had buried, nights of hunger, days of abandonment, came rushing back. Thomas's eyes hardened as he crossed his arms. "You call yourself his father? Where were you when this boy slept under bridges? Where were you when hunger nearly took his life? Where were you when my daughter's laughter came back because of him?" The man fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I failed him. When his mother died, I broke. I was lost with no work, no way to care for a baby alone. I ran, and I have carried that shame ever since. But I've seen him now, alive, strong, full of light, and I'm begging for another chance." Leo's fists clenched, his heart raced. Memories he rushed back. Nights begging on the street, shivering in the cold, dancing with an empty stomach. He had been invisible to the world, including the man before him. Chloe's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Leo, waiting. Thomas remained silent, knowing the choice wasn't his to make. The whole mansion seemed to hold its breath. The man sobbed, "Please, son, forgive me. Let me be your father again." Leo's lips parted, his voice trembling, but instead of hope, his words carried a weight years in the making. "You lost that right when you left me."
Leo's voice grew steadier as he spoke. "When I was hungry, you weren't there. When I slept on the streets, you weren't there. When I danced alone, hoping someone would see me, you weren't there. But when I made Chloe smile, she was there. When I needed a home, Thomas was there. When I needed a family, this family was here." His father shook his head, weeping. "I was broken, son. So was I." Leo's voice cracked, his fists trembling. "But I didn't run. I danced. I fought. I survived. And now I'm not alone anymore. I don't need a father who abandoned me. I have a family now." Chloe rose, walking carefully to Leo's side. She took his hand firmly. "And he's my brother! No one can change that!" Thomas stood, his eyes misty, though his face remained strong. He placed a hand on Leo's shoulder, speaking with quiet pride. "This house is yours, son. You don't need to search for love outside these walls. You've given us more than we could ever give you." The man broke down completely, his sobs echoing in the great hall. The guards led him away gently, his cries fading into the night. Leo watched him go, a storm of emotions raging inside. But when he turned back and felt Chloe's hand still in his, and Thomas's strong presence beside him, peace finally settled in his chest. For the first time in his life, Leo realized something powerful. Family isn't only by blood, it's by love, by choice, by who stays. When the world walks away, weeks passed, and the mansion once again bloomed with joy. Chloe's steps grew stronger. She no longer feared the playground. Now she joined her classmates with confidence. And every evening the garden became alive with laughter, claps, and Leo's dancing. The newspapers still wrote about him. Street boy turned champion. Millionaire's miracle son. But inside the mansion, none of that mattered. What mattered was the sound of Chloe's laughter and the warmth of a family that had chosen each other. One evening, as the sun set in golden light over Crestwood Heights, Thomas stood in the garden watching quietly. Leo danced across the grass, moving in funny, playful ways. Chloe tried to copy him, but soon she was laughing so hard she almost fell. The air was filled with joy, the kind money could never buy, Thomas whispered to himself. "I thought I had everything, but I had nothing until I met this boy, and through him I found my family." Leo, catching his eye, smiled and waved him over. Thomas walked forward, and the three of them, father, daughter, and son, not by blood, but by love, joined hands. Chloe's voice rang out clear and strong. "We're a family now, and nothing can change that." The boy who once danced to survive now danced with destiny. He was no longer invisible. He was loved. He was home. And the mansion that once echoed with silence would forever echo with the richest sound of all: laughter, love, and the dance of a boy who turned despair into joy. Sometimes the family we are born into fails us, but the family we find, the one built on love, loyalty, and laughter, is the one that saves us. And in the end, true wealth is not in riches, but in the bonds that make us whole.